Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus here with a review of the Warbot Defender, Fansproject's first full-on standalone toy, ages 16 plus. The Defender's box is, to me, a great evolution of what Fansproject pulled off with its G3 trailer packaging, with all kinds of stuff on the sides, and, oddly enough, piles of Japanese. Specifically, I can tell you that this says that this military design versus Daikyasto, click, a nashi day, double gun ni yori, stylish na pojengu, and you're set with your stylish posing. I do want to quickly show you what you get inside here. Taking a page from a lot of great toy packaging types, the Defender is encased in a single plastic shell. You also get a little baggie of stuff, and a pretty thick book. It's not just instructions, there's also a comic in here with great onomatopoeia like Chifang and of you! And then the instructions are done in a Photoshop style, which I fairly appreciated because it lets you see what's really going on in there. And speaking to the twist tie hater in us all, this is literally held together by two pieces of tape and a bunch of friction, and you get the robot inside, so let's have a look at him. The Defender's accessory count is fairly low, but it's pretty palpable nonetheless. You get a pair of pistols and a sword, and let me tell you something about this sword right away. This sword is effing thin. The plastic on here is really, really thin, to the point where if I shine a light on it, it actually makes them a little transparent. Now, the thing is, these are also not soft plastic. These are still a fairly stiff plastic. What that means is, I'm really scared I'm gonna break them. So, this is something you sort of have to handle with kid gloves, because they feel a little fragile. I'm not sure if I would have preferred them in a more rubbery plastic. They would have been more durable, but being this thin, they might have been, a little bit flexy. The guns, however, are pretty solid. They're just a piece of molding, and they feel like ABS goodness. Accessory storage is quick, easy, and efficient. Just how I like it. Defender has a similar overall aesthetic to Transformers Classics and the second iteration of the universe. Bright colors mixed with duller grays, lots of harsh angles, and a nicely defined body line. Defender's head sculpt captures a lot of aesthetic qualities that one could have found in a classic Transformer called Springer. How odd. I really enjoy the angles that they used for this sculpt, and I think the details came out on here a lot better than their first go at a head sculpt on City Commander. The features are just more defined and a lot more organic looking in robotic ways, to contradict myself with words. I really like how it turned out. Really, the sculpted detail on Defender is quite impressive. I like how he turned out, especially with all these Liefeldian canisters all over his body. Down here, the sculpt can get broken up a little bit. I'd say that the legs and feet are actually both the strongest and weakest parts of the design. They are strong because their joints are clicky, but they're weak because down here things kind of get muddled. Instead of a proper sideways ankle joint due to this little hinge that the foot is on, your ankle joint is here, and that can break up the sculpt a little bit, I find. When you're trying to get him to stand wide-legged and he's kind of bending in the middle of the shin, I can see why it's done, but it is a bit of a weakness. The other thing is, easily my biggest problem with this release, is that he needs bigger heels. These tabs are used for locking in his transformations, but I really wish something folded out here, because easily one of the biggest problems I have with this guy is that he likes to fall over when you have him posed standing fairly upright. Part of the reason for that, I think, might also be that he's weighed down on the back by the die-cast plates here. The thing is, as someone who isn't really into die-cast on toys anymore, at least on transforming ones, this die-cast is pretty well done, because this doesn't pull the Binaltech mistake of having die-cast plates that will crash into everything while you're messing around with the toy. This plate is fixed on his leg. It's not a flap that can move around all over the place, and on the inside, where it clips into his leg, it's actually plastic. Also for the clips here, these are plastic pieces that protrude out. So it's actually a fairly smart use of die-cast in that no metal actually presses up against metal to lock together. All the friction locking is still done with plastic, but it does keep me a little bit nervous. The other die-cast content is on his chest plate. And again, since the chest plate doesn't really bump into anything, it's a fairly smart use of diecast, though if you decide to use one of his transformation joints here as an inner arm swivel, it can get a little dicey because it's very close to the ridge of the diecast plate there. On the upside, I have banged these diecast plates by accident several times before filming this review, and I do not see a scratch yet. The diecast is painted with a very strong matte finish that makes it blend in really well with the plastic. His posability is quite strong. He's got a full range of arm motion and a ball-jointed elbow, so you can get just about anything you'd like out of this guy. He's got a bicep swivel, but it's very tight compared to the rest of the joints on my copy of the toy. And the head is on a ball joint that is deliciously free. His sculpt has been left extremely free, so he can head waggle at you and ask you, "What's it going on, sucker?" And his hips are, again, built with ludicrously tight universal joints in the sideways realm, and I like that a lot, and extremely tight clicky joints on the thigh. Problem is that the hip swivel is, while clicky, a little bit looser. This leg is actually fine. It's the right leg on mine here, which is, again, I think weighed down a bit by the diecast on the legs. It can flop a little bit when I'm waving them around. So if you like to wave your expensive $80 plus toys around like this, you might be a little bit disappointed. So don't be a man-child like me. His knees, due to the transformation, while not double-jointed, they do actually get a double-jointed range of motion, and I like that a lot. It really helps with your posing options on this guy. As I showed you before, he's got this weird semi-ankle joint, but unfortunately his ankle joint on the ankle proper is not too strong. It can move forward like this, and it's extremely heavy, so he can assume some pretty good walking poses, but you can't bend it down or point his foot forward, so that's a bit of a limitation there. As I said, I find this area here is the weakest part of the toy, aesthetically and construction-wise. He also has a waist joint, and again, a bit of a design oversight, this is the extent of its motion. Now, I don't really think that you need to turn a guy's waist farther than this, but I wouldn't have minded a couple more degrees, and the problem is, this has actually full 360-degree, motion, but it is blocked by these panels here on his back, so it's usable, but it will feel limited to a degree. On the bright side, it is, again, a nice, heavy, clicky joint, and that's what I really like about this guy, is the level of heavy click in him. Now, holding his accessories is kind of fun. I gotta say, though, the sword, overall, I think kind of disappoints. You can't really have him reach up to grab it from behind his back, and while it goes solidly into his hand, as I said, it's extremely thin plastic, and I just feel like something's gonna break. It just frightens me a little bit. On the bright side, it does solidly fit into his right hand, which helps because, for whatever reason, the fist hole on that hand does not hold his gun very well. It's extremely loose in there on this hand, which is odd. Although, since I often put the sword in that hand, I don't really care that much, because I prefer him having a pistol and a sword as opposed to a Kimbo style. And what you saw me do there is possibly one of my favorite unmentioned features of this guy, and this is the kind of thing I will gush over. Check this out, alright? He can reach down, grab hold of his gun, and draw it from his holster. And, like, the toy can do that while you're playing with it. So, with this being, you know, an expensive $80 toy, it has an extremely kid-friendly action feature, which is that the dude can actually draw and holster his guns from his hips. This is the kind of thing that I adored about Deluxe Animated Cybertronian Prime, and to see it appear here is just, like, this is the thing that actually got me to add, like, 500 bonus points to this toy on the Vangelus fun scale. Toys that can grab their own weapons is a definite win with me. And what's cooler than grabbing your own weapons? Transforming! Tilt the head back. You need to do this so Defender's heroic chin doesn't pop the recessing part of his chest out of the bottom of his Armored Car Mode. I'm also just showing off for a second here that you can transform him while he holds his pistols. It just adds a sense of character and playability that tickles me. The conversion from military robot to armored car is fairly straightforward, with most of the direct complexity being in his arms. The hip tab is extremely hard and can be a lot of effort to lock in place. It's a solid and nicely engineered transformation, though I wish there was a direct locking mechanism for his shins. His thighs get to tab in place, though. Also, the sword stores underneath this mode, but its brittleness leaves me uneasy when I plug it into its friction clip. The Armored Car Mode is pretty hefty. The diecast gives it some nice oomph because it's so grounded with its 6-wheel drive, and it really is more of an armored ground vehicle than a sports car of any sort. That's its biggest departure from his Uncle Springer. He is way more of a wheeled tank, and I don't really mind that. I think that he has a good profile for it. He's just kind of a big block of armor that can roll around quite nicely, given that he has an extremely fragile sword underneath him. And I like the lines on him. I can understand how this mode doesn't work for a lot of people. You have to be into Cybertronian, futuristic-looking vehicles. And as I pointed out, this thing is just scary. I'm really frightened by that sword breaking. It's also worth noting at this point that I see Defender as less of a comparison to a Transformers Mainline Deluxe, and more as a comparison to a Transformers Mainline Small Voyager. He's got a lot more in common size-wise with this style of Transformer than any Deluxe I've seen. Just in terms of heft, in terms of complexity, and in terms of overall mass, he feels a lot more Voyager level to me. He's also got another vehicle mode. Attack Heli mode can be easily converted to from either of Defender's other modes. The really nice surprise about this mode's transformation was that it was not a simple case of folding out the armored car's front wheels and side panels. Once again, the arms do a lot of finicky folding work. Quite a bit of transforming takes place that helps this vehicle mode maintain its own unique aesthetic. And I think that's a great testament to Fansproject's ever-evolving design prowess. Having the two die-cast plates click together to form the tail of the helicopter mode had me extremely worried at first, but in practice the plastic tabs that actually form the friction join keep the metal from scraping against itself too much, and I haven't seen any paint damage in the multiple transformations I've done on the toy so far. I really appreciate that this helicopter mode is not just the armored car with a tail. There's just, like, a whole lot of little bits of extra transformation, like how the waist joint even is extended differently here. If you look at this as more of a Cybertronian vehicle, which I believe it was meant to be designed as, then it turns out really well, in my opinion. Also, for all my critiques of the sword, I gotta say, it spins well. Whee! There is one more accessory that came with the Defender, and it's actually to help you display him a little bit better. Now, the problem is that it involves having something else. Something that I thought I had, but I didn't. Now, you can fly this guy all over the place however much you want, but displaying him on the shelf is kind of boring if you just slap him down there. So you're provided with this clip. What this does is it plugs onto the bottom and facilitates the use of a display stand. The display stand that is the famous plastic kit base sold separately in the market that looks like that. Problem is that I have this one, and this one does not have the proper connector on the top. Closest approximation I can give you would be with this little peg here, that kind of works, but only just enough to make you feel like this is a very bad idea, because it sort of slides in there to a degree. But then the weight of this guy starts to make him shift and slide all over the place. But I don't feel totally safe with it, so I'm going to go out and try to find the proper stand. I believe that they are the Gundam Action-based stands, or Bandai Action-based stands. Available from Diamond, I believe, so you might be able to find it at your local comic shop or any hobby shop that carries the Gunpla. So, this helicopter mode overall was a lot more effective than I expected. I was already into the vehicle mode, and by vehicle mode I mean armored car mode, but I thought this was going to feel a lot more tacked on, and it doesn't. It's very unique and stands on its own a lot better than I think a lot of us expected it to. So, overall, the Warbot Defender is a combination of several big, pleasant surprises and only a few unforeseen disappointments. My biggest trepidation was the diecast content, and while I still worry a little bit about its effects on posing balance, I was happy to see that it seems to be both durable and subtle thanks to its sturdy matte finish. The vehicle modes maintain personal unique traits that stave off many common triple-changer alt-mode concerns. While the single loose hip joint on my Defender may be hit or miss QC, the inadequate heel support is a big detriment to what is an otherwise marvelous robot mode. It is definitely the first place to revisit if Fansproject returns to this mold a la their improvements to the Commander armor in its shadow and powered iterations. However, its interesting engineering, more solid design choices, and surprisingly durable and subtle use of diecast have left me impressed. Looking at the Warbot Defender in comparison to a retail mainline of transforming robot toys, it is hard to justify its hefty price tag. But in the realm of third-party lower production run items, the Defender once again shows why Fansproject is considered one of the best. For under $100, you get a fairly sturdy, intricately engineered, triple-changing robot toy. This piece likely contains twice the raw number of components that the Commander armor did, and I feel that you get your money's worth. If you're not open to the idea of paying premium for limited run items, then this will not be your cup of tea. But if you are ready to get into the realm of garage kits and third-party items, then the Warbot Defender is definitely recommended. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and I just realized that when you transform this guy back to robot mode, this yellow piece that recessed in vehicle mode kind of automorphs back into place, so that's kind of neat. You learn things while you shoot the reviews. Anyway, I hope this review was informative to you in some way, or helped you come to a decision, or just showed you some nice HD footage of the Warbot Defender. I, for one, am glad to have him in my collection, but I can understand why some people are not into the whole idea. I'd be trying to beat you over the head a lot more if he had better heel support, but overall I still think that he's an effective piece of toy, and very fun to mess with. Now all we need is, we need this guy to get a little bit taller. You know what I'm saying? Last time we heard news was August 09. Protector! Where are you? But thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more. Review 100 is on the way, and I can tell you I'm trying to do something that is at least personally special for that one. Something that will harken back to my own childhood, and one of the first times that I got to beat the scalpers.